When a teenage girl vanished without a trace, the town feared the worst. A year later, her golden retriever was found tied to a tree deep in the forest, alive and waiting. What that dog led them to was something no one was prepared to see. It was a warm spring morning in the quiet town of Mill Creek, Idaho. Birds chirped, the school bus rumbled through the streets, and students filled their backpacks, ready for another school day. But one student never arrived. Her name was Adrienne Ewing. She was smart, quiet, and always walked with her golden retriever named Buddy. On that strange morning, Adrienne left home like she always did, but she never made it to school. No one saw her. No one heard from her. And worst of all, Buddy was gone too. Her mother, Marissa Ewing, called the school, then the police. Hours turned into days. Days turned into weeks. The town searched everywhere. Forests, rivers, old buildings, nothing. Adrienne had disappeared without a trace. People in Mill Creek whispered, "Maybe she ran away. Maybe someone took her. But why would she leave without her phone or jacket?" the neighbors asked. Her mother never believed she ran away. "She wouldn't leave me," Marissa cried, "and she'd never leave Buddy." The only thing left behind was an empty dog leash found near a hiking trail. No footprints, no signs. It was like Adrienne had just vanished into thin air. After a few months, the search slowed down. News reporters stopped calling. Even some neighbors stopped asking. But Marissa didn't stop. She hung up posters every week. She checked nearby shelters for any dog that looked like Buddy. She refused to give up. "I feel her," she said. "She's still out there. And so is Buddy." Then exactly 1 year later, something strange happened. A man named Dale Morrison, a local hunter, was flying a drone over Coeur d'Alene National Forest looking for deer. His drone had a special heat camera that could see living creatures, even through thick trees. On his screen, he saw a warm shape tied to a tree. It was moving slowly. When he got closer, he couldn't believe it. It was a golden retriever, thin but alive. It was Buddy. He had a different collar. He looked tired but clean. Someone had been taking care of him. Someone had been feeding him. Dale rushed to the police. "I think I found the missing girl's dog," he told Detective Marcus Holbrook. Marcus drove straight to Marissa's house. When she opened the door and saw him holding Buddy's collar, she broke down crying. "Is he alive?" she whispered. "He is," Marcus said softly. "And that means Adrienne might be too." Hope was back, and so was fear. Where had Adrienne been for the past year? Who had kept her dog alive in the woods? And most importantly, was Adrienne still out there somewhere, waiting to be found? Buddy's return brought a storm of emotions to Mill Creek. When Adrienne's mother, Marissa, saw him, she dropped to her knees and hugged him tightly. Tears ran down her face as she whispered, "Where's Adrienne? Did she take care of you? Is she alive?" Buddy wagged his tail weakly. He licked her face, then looked off into the distance, as if he was trying to tell her something. The town hadn't seen this kind of energy in a year. People who once gave up hope now rushed back to help. Reporters came with cameras. Volunteers filled up the school gym, ready to search. Principal Janet Morrison, who had always liked Adrienne, stood on the school stage with a map. "We are going to search the Coeur d'Alene forest again," she said. "This time, we won't stop until we know what happened." Teachers, parents, students, and police officers all gathered in groups. The forest was divided into 4 large parts called quadrants. Each team got flashlights, walkie-talkies, and first aid kits. Detective Marcus Holbrook stood in front of the volunteers. "Remember, Adrienne might still be alive. We need to search carefully and quietly. No one goes alone. Watch for anything strange. Broken branches, food wrappers, clothing, or shelters." Marissa wanted to go too, but the detective told her to rest. "You've been strong all year. Let us help you now," he said gently. But Marissa didn't rest. She sat on her porch, eyes on the forest. She couldn't sit still. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Adrienne smile. Every time Buddy barked, she jumped. In the forest, the search teams moved slowly. One group found a pile of clean dog food bowls near a stream. Another found a piece of paper with a flower drawn on it. Adrienne used to draw flowers in class all the time. The clues made people nervous. "Someone's been living out here," whispered a student. "But where's Adrienne?" asked a teacher. Meanwhile, back at school, Adrian's AP biology teacher, Mr. Tobias Chandler, walked among the volunteers handing out water bottles. He looked calm, too calm, and when someone mentioned the tutoring sessions Adrian had with him, his hands trembled for just a second. One teacher said, "Weren't Adrian's tutoring days on Tuesdays?" Mr. Chandler blinked. No, no, Wednesdays. Always Wednesdays. But Marissa remembered something different. She remembered Adrian rushing out the door every Tuesday. She remembered finding strange biology notes in her daughter's bag that she hadn't written herself. And there was something else. Adrian once told her, "Mr. Chandler says I'm his favorite student." At the time, it seemed harmless. Now it sent chills down Marissa's spine. That night, after the searchers returned, tired and worried, Marissa sat in her living room with Buddy curled at her feet. She stared at her daughter's school planner, still sitting untouched on the table. She flipped through the pages until she found a sticky note. "Prep room, 4 p.m. Don't tell anyone." Her hands shook. That room was supposed to be locked. It was only used by science teachers. And suddenly Marissa knew something no one else did. Someone had been close to Adrian. Too close. Marissa stared at the sticky note. "Prep room, 4 p.m. Don't tell anyone." Her heart pounded in her chest. The prep room was part of the science lab at Mill Creek High School. Only teachers had keys. Why would Adrian be meeting someone there? And in secret? She remembered how often Adrian talked about Mr. Chandler. "He says I'm special," Adrian had said once. "He says I'm smarter than the rest." At first, Marissa had felt proud. Adrian always worked hard in school. But now those words felt strange, like warnings she hadn't noticed. The next morning, while the search continued in the forest, Marissa drove to the school. The building was quiet. Most of the teachers were helping in the forest. But the doors were unlocked, and Marissa walked inside, her steps echoing in the empty halls. She went straight to the science hallway. The prep room was at the very end, next to Mr. Chandler's classroom. She turned the handle. Locked. She checked the hallway. No one was around. She stepped back and stared at the door. Then she remembered Janet Morrison, the principal, kept a set of keys in her office. It was a risk. Marissa walked quickly down the hallway, found the keys in the top drawer of Janet's desk, and hurried back. Her fingers shook as she unlocked the prep room door. Click. She opened it slowly. Inside, the room smelled like cleaning spray and chemicals. Shelves were lined with jars, bones, and old science books. But something was off. Behind one of the tall shelves was a curtain. She pushed it aside. There in the corner was a folding table with notebooks, snacks, and 2 chairs. On the wall were pictures of Adrian. Some were of her at school. Others looked like they had been taken secretly. Outside the library, walking Buddy, studying at her desk near a window. Marissa's throat tightened. Her daughter had been watched. She picked up a notebook. Inside were drawings of flowers, perfect biology notes, and long messages written in neat handwriting. "I'm so proud of you, Adrian. You don't need anyone else. They don't understand your gift. But I do. I'll help you become great." Page after page, Marissa felt a cold chill. This wasn't tutoring. It was something else. Something dark. Just then she heard footsteps. She froze, clutching the notebook. Mr. Chandler stood at the door. His eyes widened when he saw her. "You shouldn't be in here," he said quietly. Marissa didn't move. "Where is my daughter?" she asked. Mr. Chandler smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. "She's special. I gave her everything she needed. She didn't belong in that noisy world." Marissa's eyes burned with tears. "Tell me where she is." But Chandler turned and walked away. Marissa ran after him, but he disappeared down a side exit. She raced outside, but he was gone. Shaking, she called Detective Holbrook. "It's him. It's Mr. Chandler. He's been watching Adrian. He took her." The detective's voice went serious. "Stay there. I'm coming. And Marissa, don't go near him again." But Marissa had made a decision. She wouldn't wait. She would follow him herself. Marissa couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Adrian's face. Pale, scared, hidden somewhere no one else could find her. She sat in the dark living room, holding Buddy close. The dog lifted his head every now and then, as if he felt something too. Mr. Chandler had run when she confronted him. That told her everything. He was hiding something. But where? Suddenly, Marissa remembered something from months ago. It was just after Adrian had gone missing. Mr. Chandler had mentioned helping care for his grandmother's house, an old place outside town that had recently been taken off the rental list. He said it was too much work to sell, so he was just keeping it tidy. At the time, it hadn't seemed important. But now, she opened her laptop and searched the local housing listings. There it was. Chandler Estate, County Road 14. No longer available. She pulled on her coat and grabbed her keys. "Come on, buddy," she whispered. The dog stood up, ears alert. The house sat at the edge of town, past the hills and near the tree line of Coeur d'Alene Forest. It was dark and cold as Marissa pulled into the long, overgrown driveway. Vines covered the sides of the house, and one of the windows was boarded shut. The porch creaked as she stepped onto it. Marissa tried the front door. Locked. She walked quietly around the side and peeked into the windows. Dusty furniture, empty shelves. Nothing unusual. Then she noticed something strange, a small light glowing from beneath the house. She found a cellar door behind the garage. It was slightly open. Heart pounding, she pushed it. The hinges moaned. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. It smelled musty, like old books and wet earth. A wooden staircase led down into a basement. At the bottom was something she didn't expect, a classroom. There were posters of the human body, a bookshelf filled with textbooks, and a small desk with markers and notebooks. On one wall, someone had written in red ink, "Stay focused. Don't fail. Greatness requires sacrifice." On the desk was a plate with fresh crumbs. Someone had been here recently. Then she heard it, a soft, almost broken voice, coming from behind a curtain at the far end. "Hello?" Marissa whispered. The curtain moved. A girl stepped out slowly. Thin, pale, hair longer than it used to be, eyes wide and unsure. "Adrian," Marissa said, barely able to speak. The girl blinked, then her lips trembled. "Mom?" Marissa rushed forward and wrapped her in the tightest hug she had ever given. "You're safe now," she whispered. "You're coming home." Adrian shook her head. "No, I can't. He said I'm not ready. I have to finish. I have to get perfect scores, or I'll ruin everything." Marissa pulled back. "Who told you that?" Adrian looked at the stairs. "Mr. Chandler." Before Marissa could answer, she heard a car door slam outside. Mr. Chandler was back, and they were trapped inside his secret classroom. Marissa's heart beat faster than it ever had. She pulled Adrian close and whispered, "We have to leave. Right now." But Adrian didn't move. She stood frozen in the middle of the basement, her eyes wide with fear. "He said, if I ever tried to leave, bad things would happen," she whispered. "Nothing will happen to you," Marissa said firmly. "I'm your mother. I will protect you." Above them, the old wooden floor creaked. Footsteps. Mr. Chandler was inside the house. Marissa looked around the basement for a way out. The staircase led straight up into the main house. But Chandler would be there. There had to be another way. Then Buddy let out a low growl and sniffed near the corner of the room. Marissa followed him and spotted something behind a large filing cabinet. "A door," she said. She pushed the cabinet aside with all her strength. Behind it was a narrow tunnel, carved into the stone foundation. "Come on," she said, grabbing Adrian's hand. "I'm scared," Adrian whispered. "I know," Marissa replied. "But I'm here now, and you're not alone anymore." They crouched into the tight space. Buddy followed behind them. Above, Mr. Chandler's voice echoed down the stairs. "Adrian," he called sweetly, "you left your assignment unfinished. You know I don't like that." Adrian whimpered. Marissa kept moving, guiding her through the dark tunnel. The walls were damp. The ceiling was low. They crawled for what felt like forever, until they saw a faint circle of light up ahead. It was a metal grate. Marissa pushed on it. It was heavy but not locked. With one final shove, it popped open, and they crawled out into a clearing behind the house. Fresh air, stars above, freedom. Marissa pulled Adrian up and whispered, "Run!" They dashed through the trees. Buddy barked once, then followed. his golden fur shining under the moonlight. Behind them, the sound of a door slamming echoed through the forest. Chandler had realized they were gone. They ran faster, crashing through leaves and branches, until they reached the dirt road where Marissa had parked the car. She threw the door open, helped Adrian in, and Buddy jumped into the back seat. Marissa started the engine. Just then, headlights appeared behind them. It was Mr. Chandler's car. He was following them. Adrian screamed. Marissa floored the gas pedal. The tires spun and kicked up gravel as the car sped forward. Chandler's car stayed close behind. He flashed his headlights and shouted from his window, "Adrienne, you don't understand. You need me." Adrienne covered her ears. "I want to go home. I want to go home." Marissa grabbed her phone. With one hand on the wheel, she dialed 911. "This is Marissa Ewing," she shouted. "I found my daughter. We're being chased by her abductor, Tobias Chandler." "Stay on the line," the dispatcher said. "Officers are on the way." They turned onto the main road, just as two police cars flew around the corner, sirens blaring. Chandler slammed on his brakes and tried to turn, but the road was blocked. Officers jumped out with flashlights and guns drawn. "Out of the car! Hands where we can see them!" Chandler didn't fight. He stepped out slowly, still smiling. "I only wanted to help her," he said quietly. Marissa's car came to a stop nearby. She turned to Adrian and held her close. "It's over," she whispered. "You're safe now." But Adrian just stared ahead, shaking, because even though she was free, her mind was still trapped. The flashing red and blue lights lit up the dark road as more police officers arrived. Mr. Chandler stood calmly between two officers, handcuffed and quiet, like he had done nothing wrong. Marissa held Adrian tightly in the backseat of the car. Buddy sat beside them, resting his head on Adrian's lap. But Adrian didn't speak. She didn't cry. She didn't even blink. She just stared at Chandler. "He said I couldn't leave," she finally whispered. "He said the outside world would ruin me." Marissa's heart broke. "Sweetheart, he lied to you. He controlled you, but you're safe now. I promise." An officer gently tapped on the window. "Ma'am, we need to take Adrienne to the hospital. She needs to be checked by doctors." Marissa nodded and climbed out, still holding her daughter's hand. At the hospital, doctors checked Adrienne's heart, lungs, blood pressure, and weight. She had lost a lot of weight and looked pale, but physically she was okay. Emotionally, that was a different story. A soft-spoken psychologist sat with Adrienne while Marissa waited outside the room. After some time, the doctor came out. "She has signs of something called Stockholm Syndrome," the woman said gently. Marissa blinked. "What does that mean?" "It means she became emotionally attached to her kidnapper. She believes he was helping her. She doesn't see him as dangerous, even though he hurt her." "But he took her. He lied to her. He locked her up," Marissa cried. "Yes," the doctor said, "and he also fed her, gave her books, and told her she was special. That kind of brainwashing can confuse a young mind, especially someone like Adrienne, who already felt pressure to be perfect." Marissa sat down slowly. Her daughter had always pushed herself hard. Straight A's, perfect attendance, always worried about failing. Now that desire to succeed had been used as a weapon against her. Meanwhile, at the police station, Detective Marcus Holbrook sat across the table from Tobias Chandler. Chandler smiled during the whole interview. "I didn't hurt her," he said. "I helped her. I made her better. I gave her structure. I made her focused." "You kidnapped her," Marcus said coldly. "You kept her in a basement. You scared her into believing no one else could help." "She believed in me," Chandler said, still smiling. "She thanked me. She said I made her smarter." Marcus slammed a folder on the table. Inside were photos from the basement, the fake classroom, the food bowls, the notes, the hidden tunnel. "She was a child," Marcus said. "You were her teacher. You were supposed to protect her, not trap her." Chandler's smile faded for the first time. Back at the hospital, Adrienne finally looked at her mother. "Mom, I don't know how to live in the real world anymore," she whispered. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail?" Marissa brushed the hair from Adrienne's face. "You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to prove anything. You just have to be alive. And you are. That's enough. Adrienne blinked and tears finally spilled down her cheeks. I missed you, she whispered. I missed you every day, Marissa replied, hugging her close. For the first time in a year, Adrienne didn't feel afraid. But deep inside, she knew that healing wouldn't come quickly. It would take time, and love, and the strength to believe that her life could still be hers. Adrienne sat quietly in the hospital room, her legs tucked beneath her, and her arms wrapped tightly around Buddy. The golden retriever had barely left her side since she was found, as if he knew she still needed him. Marissa watched her daughter carefully, afraid to ask too much, but also afraid of staying silent. The doctors had told her, let Adrienne speak when she's ready. But waiting felt like holding her breath forever. Finally, Adrienne broke the silence. Do you remember the day I went missing? She asked, her voice soft. Marissa nodded, tears already filling her eyes. I wasn't going to run away, Adrienne said. He came to our house. He said we had an emergency tutoring session. That I'd forgotten. He made it sound so important, so serious. I didn't want to disappoint him. Marissa's heart sank. You never did anything wrong, Adrienne. Never. Adrienne shook her head slowly. I believed him. He drove me to that old house, and at first it looked normal. Just books and tests and papers. He told me I was going to learn faster if I stayed there for a few days. That school didn't understand me. That you wouldn't understand? Marissa covered her mouth. Oh, Adrienne! He took my phone, Adrienne continued. He said I couldn't contact anyone while I focused. Then he locked the door and told me I wasn't ready to be out in the world yet. Buddy rested his head on Adrienne's knee, as if comforting her. I begged him to let me call you, she whispered. He said if I really loved you, I would stay and become the daughter you always wanted. Smart, perfect, successful. Marissa's tears spilled. I never needed you to be perfect, Adrienne. I just needed you to be safe. Adrienne finally looked up, her face filled with emotion. I thought I was helping you by staying. I thought if I became the best student in the world, I'd make you proud. Marissa knelt beside her. You were already everything I needed. I love you. Not your grades, not your trophies. You! Adrienne began to cry. He watched everything, she whispered. He listened through vents. He wrote notes on my tests. He told me when to sleep, when to read, when to be quiet. I wasn't allowed to speak unless I had the right answer. If I cried, he'd say I was wasting energy. Marissa's hands trembled as she hugged her. I didn't fight at first, Adrienne admitted. He was so calm, so sure. He made me believe the world was dangerous, that only he could protect me, that only he saw how smart I really was. That's what abusers do, Marissa said gently. They twist your mind until you can't tell the difference between love and fear. Adrienne sniffed. But when I saw you, when I saw your eyes, I remembered who I was. I remembered home. Marissa kissed her forehead. I'm going to help you find your way back, one small step at a time. Adrienne nodded slowly. I want to try. It would not be easy. The walls that had been built in her mind would take time to break. But she had taken her first brave step. She had spoken the truth, and now the healing could begin. 3 weeks later, Adrienne stood in front of her bedroom mirror, wearing a simple blue dress. Her hair had been trimmed, her skin looked a little brighter, and her eyes, though still tired, held something new. Strength. Today was the first day of the trial. Tobias Chandler, her former teacher, was being charged with kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, and child endangerment. The courtroom would be full of people, reporters, strangers, lawyers, even students from her school. But most of all, he would be there. Marissa stood behind her, gently adjusting Adrienne's collar. You don't have to go, she said softly. You can give your statement later, in private. Adrienne shook her head. I want to be there. I want him to see that he didn't break me. They drove in silence. As they pulled into the courthouse parking lot, Adrienne saw a small crowd of reporters with cameras and microphones. She flinched. Marissa reached across and took her hand. Just breathe. Look at me. You're not alone. With police guiding them, they made their way inside through a back entrance. The courtroom smelled like wood and paper. It was cold and serious. Adrian's hands trembled as they walked past rows of strangers. Then she saw him, Mr. Chandler. He sat at the front table beside his lawyer. He wore a suit and glasses, just like he had in school. But something was different. The confidence in his eyes was gone. His smile was fake. And for the first time, he looked small. Adrian looked away and sat beside the prosecutor. The judge entered and everyone stood. All rise. The trial began. The lawyer for the state described everything. How Tobias Chandler had lured a student, locked her away, and pretended it was for her own good. The jury listened closely. The prosecutor showed photos from the basement, Buddy's collar, and Adrian's notebooks filled with his strange messages. Then the judge said, "We will now hear from Adrian Ewing." The room fell silent. Adrian stood slowly and walked to the witness box. Every step felt heavy, like her feet were stuck in mud. She sat down, took the oath, and looked around the room. Her eyes met his. "Adrian," the prosecutor began gently, "can you tell us what happened?" Adrian took a deep breath. "Mr. Chandler told me I was special, that no one else understood me. He said I would never succeed unless I let him help me. So I believed him. I went with him, and I didn't come back." She paused. "He locked me in a basement. He made me study all day. He told me the world was too loud and too mean, and that I was too soft to live in it." People in the room looked shocked. Some gasped. Others whispered. Adrian continued, her voice stronger now. "But he lied. He made me believe I was broken. He made me believe I had to be perfect all the time. And when I wasn't, I felt ashamed. I stopped thinking. I just obeyed." She turned toward Chandler. "But I remember who I am now. I'm not your project. I'm not your prize. I'm Adrian Ewing, and I'm not afraid of you anymore." The courtroom was silent. Tobias Chandler lowered his head. When Adrian stepped down, people quietly wiped away tears. Even some of the jurors looked deeply moved. Back at her seat, Marissa hugged her tightly. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. Adrian smiled just a little. For the first time since her rescue, she felt like she could breathe without fear. The courtroom buzzed with tension as the trial neared its end. The lawyers had finished their final arguments. The jury had listened to every witness, examined every photo, and read every journal page Adrian had written during her year of captivity. Now, all that was left was to wait. Adrian sat quietly beside her mother on the long wooden bench, her hands folded in her lap. Buddy wasn't allowed in the courtroom, but he waited outside in the care of a family friend. Adrian missed him already. His presence always made her feel safe. "Do you think they'll believe me?" she whispered to her mom. "They already do," Marissa replied gently. "The truth is on your side." Across the room, Tobias Chandler sat still, his face pale. The confidence he once carried, the way he used to speak calmly and pretend to care, had faded. Now he looked like a man who knew his lies had finally caught up with him. The judge returned to the bench. "All rise." The jury entered. 12 people, quiet and serious, took their seats. The foreperson, a middle-aged woman with glasses, held a folded paper in her hands. The judge nodded. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" "We have, Your Honor." Adrian held her breath. Her heart thumped in her chest. She grabbed her mother's hand tightly. The woman stood and read aloud. "In the case of the state versus Tobias Chandler, on the charge of kidnapping, we find the defendant guilty." Adrian's breath caught. "On the charge of unlawful imprisonment, guilty. On the charge of child endangerment, guilty." There was a long silence. Then the judge turned to Mr. Chandler. "You have been found guilty of multiple serious crimes against a minor. Your sentence will be announced in 2 weeks. Until then, you will remain in custody." 2 officers walked over to Chandler and placed handcuffs on his wrists. He didn't struggle. He didn't say a word. He only looked at Adrian, his eyes full of confusion, as if he still couldn't understand how she'd escaped his control. Adrian looked straight back at him, her face calm. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just stared. And then turned away, because she didn't need anything from him anymore. Not approval, not fear, not forgiveness. Outside the courtroom, reporters rushed toward her, flashing cameras in her face and shouting questions. "Adrian, how does it feel to be free?" What would you say to other girls going through something like this? Do you think justice was served? But Adrienne didn't answer. She kept walking, one foot in front of the other, until she stepped into the sunlight. Buddy barked and ran to her, wagging his tail wildly. Adrienne knelt down and hugged him tightly, pressing her face into his fur. "We did it, Buddy," she whispered. "We're free." Marissa smiled through tears. It wasn't over. Not yet. The pain wouldn't vanish in a day. The memories wouldn't disappear overnight. Adrienne still had hard days ahead, but justice had spoken, and for the first time in a year, she felt like the world believed her. Weeks passed after the trial. The leaves in Mill Creek began to change color, and the cold wind of fall blew through the town. Life slowly returned to normal for most people. But for Adrienne, nothing felt normal at all. Every morning she woke up and looked at the ceiling, wondering where she was. For a few seconds, she expected to hear Mr. Chandler's voice outside her door, telling her what pages to read or what test to take. It took a moment each day to remember. He was gone. She was free. But being free didn't mean everything was okay. Adrienne had started seeing a therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Collins. They met twice a week in a small room with soft chairs and a table full of tissues. "Tell me what a normal day looks like for you now," Dr. Collins would ask. Adrienne struggled to answer. She didn't go to school yet. The thought of hallways, lockers, and teachers still made her feel nervous. Even reading science books brought back memories of the basement. She barely touched them. Sometimes she just sat in her room, holding Buddy and staring out the window. Marissa tried her best to help. She made Adrienne's favorite meals. She let her sleep in late. She painted the walls of her room a fresh sky blue color and bought her a soft new blanket. But still, Adrienne felt like a ghost walking through a world that had kept moving without her. One day her old friend Lena came to visit. They hadn't spoken since before she disappeared. Lena stood at the door holding a small brown paper bag. "Hey," she said, a little nervous. "I brought cookies. Your favorite, chocolate chip with sea salt." Adrienne smiled a little. "Thanks." They sat in silence for a few minutes before Lena spoke again. "I missed you, you know, a lot." Adrienne stared at the floor. "I thought everyone forgot me." "We didn't," Lena said quickly. "We just didn't know what to do." Adrienne finally looked up. "I don't know how to be me anymore." Lena leaned forward. "You don't have to be the old Adrienne. Just be the Adrienne who's here now. I'll be your friend either way." Adrienne blinked back tears. They spent the afternoon talking, eating cookies, and even laughing once or twice. It was awkward. It was strange, but it was a start. Later that night, Marissa knocked on Adrienne's door. "How was your day?" she asked. Adrienne gave a tired smile. "Not perfect." "That's okay," Marissa said, kissing her forehead. "Perfect isn't the goal. Healing is." Adrienne looked around her room, at the new paint, the photos on her desk, the sleeping dog at her feet. Maybe it would take time. Maybe there would be bad days. But little by little, normal was coming back. In a different way. In her way. One rainy afternoon, Adrienne sat on her bedroom floor, flipping through an old box of notebooks. Most of them were from before she disappeared. Homework, poems, silly doodles. But at the very bottom of the box was a black leather journal. She froze. This was the journal she had written in during her time in the basement. For weeks she had been too afraid to touch it. The thought of seeing those pages again, the ones she filled while trapped and scared, made her stomach twist. But today, something inside her said she was ready. She opened it. The first few pages were messy, written in shaky handwriting. "Day 3. He says I'm still not focused enough. I miss Buddy. I hope he's okay." Day 8. He gave me peanut butter crackers and a new book on genetics. I'm tired. Day 11. I had a nightmare. I screamed. He turned off the lights and said I failed the test. Adrienne felt a lump in her throat. These weren't just words. They were pieces of her trapped self trying to survive. Then came the drawings, flowers, sunrises, a little house that looked like hers, and a girl holding a golden retriever. On one page, she had written something that stopped her cold. "Mom, if you're reading this, it means you found me. Please don't think I forgot you. I didn't. I thought about you every day. I just didn't know how to get back. Tears filled her eyes. She hugged the journal to her chest. Later that evening, she brought it downstairs. Mom, she said, holding the black notebook, there's something I want to show you. Marissa sat beside her on the couch. Adrian opened the journal and placed it between them. Together, they flipped through the pages. Some made them cry. Some made them sit in silence. Some made Marissa whisper, "Oh my God." But as painful as it was, Adrian knew something important. These pages didn't trap her anymore. They were evidence of her strength, proof that she had survived the darkest place imaginable and still found her way home. Afterward, Marissa said softly, "Would you want to share some of this with your therapist? Or maybe help other girls who might be going through something similar?" Adrian looked at the journal again. "I think I do," she whispered. "I think I'm ready." That night, she wrote a letter on a fresh page. To the girl who feels stuck, who feels like no one will ever come for her, I want you to know someone will. And when they do, you'll remember who you are. Not his version of you. Your version. The strong, brave, real one. She closed the journal and smiled. The basement had once been her prison, but now the memories inside it were turning into something new. Hope. It had been 6 weeks since the trial, and today was the final court date, sentencing day. Adrian had healed more in those 6 weeks than anyone expected. She still had nightmares, still woke up in cold sweats, but she no longer flinched when the mailman knocked or when the door creaked open. Today, she chose to walk into the courtroom on her own. No reporters were allowed inside this time. The room was quiet, just Adrian, her mom, a few police officers, lawyers, the judge, and Tobias Chandler, seated beside his lawyer, no longer in a suit, but in a gray prison uniform. Adrian didn't look away this time. The judge entered. "All rise." Everyone stood. Then the judge looked at the paperwork on her desk and began speaking. "Mr. Chandler, the court has found you guilty of 3 serious charges. You used your position of power to manipulate, isolate, and imprison a student under your care. You not only broke the law, you broke the trust that every parent places in a teacher." Tobias Chandler sat motionless, his eyes cold. "Adrian Ewing was a child," the judge continued. "A child with dreams, with friends, with a family. You stole a year of her life. But thanks to her courage and the determination of her mother, she is here today, and you will never harm her or anyone else again." She turned to the clerk. "On all counts, the sentence is as follows: 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole." There was silence. Then Adrian felt it. Not fear, not relief, but something deep and powerful. Closure. Tobias Chandler did not cry. He didn't apologize. He simply stood when the guards motioned for him and walked out the side door in handcuffs. And just like that, he was gone. Outside the courtroom, Marissa wrapped her arms around her daughter. "He's not your story anymore," she whispered. "You are." Adrian leaned into her mother's arms, and for the first time, she didn't feel broken. That night, the sky was clear, and the stars above Mill Creek seemed brighter than usual. Adrian sat on the porch with Buddy, a cup of warm tea in her hands. "I don't know what the future will be," she whispered to the night, "but I know it won't be his." She reached down and scratched Buddy's head. "We're writing our own ending now." Inside, Marissa watched her daughter through the window. Not every story has a perfect ending, but some stories have justice, and sometimes that's the beginning of everything. 2 months after the sentencing, Adrian stood in front of a classroom, not as a student this time, but as a speaker. It was a small gathering at Mill Creek Community Center. Just a few parents, some teachers, and a group of teenagers from local high schools. A sign on the wall read, "Safe Voices, Stories from Survivors." Adrian's therapist had gently encouraged her to share her experience, only if she felt ready. At first, she had said no, but after reading her journal again, Adrian realized something. Her story could help someone else. Marissa sat in the front row, her hands tightly folded, her heart full of both pride and worry. Adrian stepped up to the podium. Her hands shook a little, but she took a deep breath and began. "Hi, I'm Adrian. Some of you may know what happened to me. A year ago, I disappeared. A lot of people thought I had run away. I hadn't. I was taken by someone I trusted. The room went still. I was gone for almost a year, locked away, cut off from the world, told that my thoughts didn't matter unless they were perfect. I was told my mother didn't love me the way he did. I believed those things because he was my teacher. She paused and looked out at the young faces staring back. I'm not telling you this because I want pity. I'm telling you because it can happen to anyone. When someone tells you that love means keeping secrets, or hiding, or being scared, that's not love. That's control. Several heads nodded slowly. I survived because my mom never stopped looking. I survived because my dog Buddy waited for me. I survived because even when I forgot who I was, something inside me still whispered, "This isn't right." She took another breath. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to earn someone's love with grades or silence or obedience. You are already enough. A quiet tear rolled down a teacher's cheek. A student in the back clapped softly. Others followed. Afterwards, students came up to her, one by one. Thank you for being brave. You made me feel less alone. I think something like that is happening to my friend. Adrian listened, hugged people who needed it, and promised to connect them with counselors. Back at home, Marissa lit a candle and made hot chocolate. Adrian sat down next to her, with Buddy curled at her feet. You were incredible today, Marissa said. I was terrified, Adrian admitted, but it felt good to speak up, to turn pain into something that helps someone else. Marissa nodded. You're stronger than you think. Adrian looked out the window at the stars. I want to do more, she said. Write, speak, help other kids. Maybe even one day, teach. Marissa smiled. The kind of teacher the world actually needs. Adrian grinned. Not a victim, not a prisoner, a survivor. And a voice for those still waiting to be found. Adrian stood in front of the mirror again, just like she had before the trial. But today the girl staring back wasn't trembling. She wasn't hiding behind fear or shame. She was different now. Her hair had grown longer. Her skin had color again. And her eyes, though touched by sadness, were filled with something new. Peace. That morning, Marissa surprised her with a box. Inside it was a photo album. On the first page was a picture of Adrienne, as a little girl, sitting on the grass beside Buddy, giggling. You used to carry this everywhere, Marissa said. I found it while cleaning out the garage. Adrienne flipped through the pages. Birthday parties, science fairs, snow angels, field trips. For a long time, she had tried to forget the girl in those pictures. That girl had been so full of life, before fear took it away. But now she missed her. I want to find her again, Adrienne whispered. Marissa smiled. She's still there. You just took the long way home. Later that afternoon, Adrian walked with Buddy through Coeur d'Alene Forest, the very place where he had been found tied to a tree. The leaves rustled gently. Sunlight peeked through the tall trees. It didn't feel scary anymore. It felt like healing. She sat on a fallen log, Buddy resting beside her, his eyes watching her like always. I know it's not over, she whispered, but I think I'm ready to begin again. For the first time in months, she took out her sketchbook, not the one from the basement, a new one, fresh pages. She drew a girl standing in a forest. Next to her was a golden retriever, and above her the words, I was lost, but I was not forgotten. She closed the book and stood up, brushing the leaves from her jeans. That night, she wrote a final journal entry. They say the past shapes you, but I say what you do with it is what really defines you. I was taken, but I am not broken. I was hurt, but I'm healing. I'm Adrian Ewing. And I remember the girl I used to be, not because I want to go back, but because I want to carry her forward. I survived, and now I live. Sometimes the strongest people are the ones who fight battles no one can see. Speaking out, asking for help, and choosing to heal. These are the bravest acts of all. For you, my readers, if you ever feel unsafe or unsure about someone's behavior, no matter how much you trust them, would you be brave enough to speak up? And how can you help someone else find their voice when they can't speak for themselves? Please like and subscribe. Also, don't forget to comment below.